So I'm sure that you already heard about this beef between Fico and Zelensky over the gas transport prices and his trips to Moscow and hanging out with Putin, right? And I was really curious how this is being perceived in Ukraine. So I talked to my friend Ilya. Give it a listen. Hi, Ilya. How are you doing?
Hello, Milan. All fine. All good.
It's been a while since we saw each other alive, right? I think it
Yeah.
was when we like first met back in Kyiv. I got back from Asia, all backpacky style, and we got super drunk, and you showed me around. That was a lot of fun. How long was that ago? 5 years?
Remember-
7 years?
You should remember that. I don't think you had lots of trips to Asia, or you did.
Oh, you would be surprised. I actually did a lot of trips to Asia before, like since.
Okay, at least not a lot of trips to Asia and going to Kyiv after that.
No, I mean, it was actually random to think that there was a world where the cheapest flight from Bangkok was to Kiev. That was because I went because it was the cheapest way to get back.
No flights to Ukraine. No flights already for
Yeah,
3 years.
yeah, definitely no cheap flights. I hear it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, where are you right now?
Uh, right now I'm in Kyiv.
Okay,
I mean,
I
like I'm
rem-
visiting my parents, but yeah,
yeah,
I'm based in Kyiv.
yeah. I mean, I remember that. I mean, we were all super shocked when the conflict started, right? And I texted you back then over Instagram being like, yeah, man, pack your stuff, come to, I think I lived in Prague back then, right? I said, like, come to Prague and, we'll figure things out. You can crash and then you will figure things out. And you said no, right? Why did you say no?
I mean, it felt strange to leave your country, to leave your home. I mean, most
Okay.
of people were going other way around to the border with Russia. to,
Yeah. Okay.
so if I didn't do that, I felt that I at least have to stay in Kiev. Yeah, but
Eh,
lots of women, kids, yeah, lots of people went also to the safer places around
Yeah.
Ukraine.
Yeah. And it's been a few years since you made the decision, and I know you are quite engaged in the kind of like trying to move the needle with the conflict. But we will get to that. But how do you see the decision retroactively? Like, are you happy that you stayed? Because now it's kind of sealed, right? You can't leave anymore.
Yeah, no. I mean, like it was actually. I'm sure that on that point when we were messaging, the border was already closed for guys.
Was it?
So
Okay.
I mean, they closed it like the second day after the invasion.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So probably on that point, I already couldn't leave the country.
Okay. Sorry. So it's kind of like a false dichotomy, right? Like you could
Yeah,
play here
no,
and be
I
like, I'm happy
decided
that I
to
stay.
stay, not because I couldn't leave, but because I wanted. No, no, no.
And
But I, I enjoy living in Ukraine, and there are lots of troubles. But first of all, I think it's the I don't have kids,
mm,
so I'm not worried about kids. I guess that's the main thing for people to worry around when you have
yeah,
family
that
family with the kids and you have to worry, are they going to be safe if the missile will hit them, hit the school? That's
yeah.
when you're in trouble. But
Also the trauma from like living under constant stress must be really daunting and taxing for people who are like developing their personalities, right?
yeah,
Um, Before we get to the part about Slovakia, Ukraine, and Russia, maybe a little bit of kind of like a background. So I understand you are not fighting actively, but you like do quite a lot of activity to support the kind of effort from the Ukrainian side. So what do you do? I saw some articles published, right?
I mean, I would love to say that I do a lot to support, but I don't think that my input is so innumerous or huge. But I basically, from the Russian invasion, I started to work with international media, like or
Uh-huh.
helping with war correspondence. So I'm going to closer to the front line from time to time. I don't know, I've been to Bakhmut when it almost felt, when it was already almost occupied, and
Hmm.
to Kherson when it was liberated. Recently, I've been to occupied by Ukraine Kursk region.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm not like
Okay.
super famous war correspondent, but I'm somewhere
Uh-huh.
close.
All right.
Doing that.
That, I mean,
And I still work in my uh, before the war work in film distribution. So we buy
Yeah.
international films and screen them in Ukraine. It's mostly art house cinema.
Yeah. I think it's, by the way, super courageous that you like kind of are um determined enough to go to places where like fighting is still kind of happening or was just recently happening. That's really cool, man. Um, so look, shifting gears a little bit. Since you are in Kiev, there's this super famous claim by our prime minister, I mean Robert Fico, who it was quite a while ago. I think maybe like a year ago, or it wasn't recent, when he said like, "Oh, don't be naive. There is no war in Kiev. People in Kiev live completely normal lives. Go check it out there." So how is it? Is it the normal life? Is it not the normal life? Like how is life in Kiev?
I mean, from one point, it's when you come to Kyiv, it seems like it's normal life because you have all the
Hmm.
coffee places open, you have the bars, you have people going to work. But like once at least a month, you have a missile, like 5 missiles, 30 drones that would hit some neighborhoods around the city. Like 3 weeks ago, there was a drone that landed in the residential building just next to the president's
Okay.
administration. So I mean, like we got used to that and we live with that, but it's you still can die because of Russian missile. it's
Yeah.
not
I mean,
it's not so dangerous as on in the cities like in Kherson, for example. Kherson
yeah.
is
Yeah.
5 kilometers from Russians, and Russians they just practice drone usage piloting, FPV drone that bring the
Yeah.
bombs, and they just kill civilians on the streets because Russians are practicing usage of
Okay.
FPV.
That that that's pretty brutal, but it also seems like all right. Like I understand that like bombing once every, I don't know, 3 4 weeks is not as bad as Kherson, but since you don't know where it's coming from, I guess it's pretty daunting, right? Because like you can theoretically like die anytime, right? Or how does it feel? Like do you live in like fear, or is it like
I
eventually stops
really
being
depends
stressful?
on the person. Some people are really afraid, and some people are just sleeping in their corridors because it's considered to
Okay.
be safer in the corridors. Or they
Mm-hmm.
really, when you hear air raid alarm, they really go to the shelter.
Uh-huh.
Lots of people don't care much, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why usually someone will die when the drone will attack Kyiv
Okay.
next time. Uh, but yeah, like percent like chances that you will die because of missile and drone, I believe, is rather small, but much higher than in other European countries.
Yeah, I imagine it's almost infinitely higher. No, but I mean, so what I hear is that it's not a normal situation, but you try to live a normal life as much as possible, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That's the
excellent.
case.
So shifting the gears a little bit. So recently, Ukraine stopped the transfer of the gas, right, of the Russian gas. Which I mean, I was actually kind of, from my perspective, I was kind of surprised that you're still doing it because like you're earning money to your adversary, which is a bit odd. But
Yeah,
okay, you were still doing it, right? And that hit Slovakia a little bit because we transport a lot of gas for our land, and we are getting money from that, right? There's a service that we are then paid for by the countries that like receive the gas on the far end, and I think it was a few hundred million euros, and our prime minister was pretty angry about it, and I think he even kind of like had a little bit of a beef with Zelensky. I think he threatened some consequences with like not giving you electricity anymore, and also that he will be like tougher on the refugees in Slovakia. How do you see this? Like, what's the perception on the kind of other side of the beef?
I mean, like from one side, like in Ukraine, I don't know if all people know, but I think quite a lot of people remember that Slovakia was supporting Ukraine so much in the beginning of Russian invasion because you gave us like lots of like weapon that you had like in only one item, like some
Yeah, exactly.
yeah
The
protect.
defense system, the air defense system, we still don't have a replacement for that we would own. Yeah, yeah,
And that's like
yeah.
everyone remembers that. and so Ukrainians are super thankful
Uh-huh.
for this support. And I think like 100,000 refugees are still living in Slovakia.
Quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone remembers that. We don't know. I don't know what is happening like inside the country, but it was quite a big surprise when after such support and after all this, like it seems like Slovak people understands completely the threat that is coming from Russia, being like part of uh, Soviet pro-Soviet bloc back in the
Yeah, yeah.
days, and then when the situation changed radically, it was a bit shocking
Uh-huh.
because like how people could elect such prime minister,
Yeah.
but maybe there is something beneath except like populist promises from him, or is it just maybe it's just a regular situation that is common nowadays for lots of countries when they elect populist.
I mean, unfortunately, I think multiple things happen. Number one, like there's this kind of like exhaustion from the support, right? Like it's a lot easier to support conflict that recently started, and then people eventually kind of get used to it. The news cycle moves away. So I think that's one effect that happened in Slovakia. The other effect is that we have incredible amount of like misinformation. I think roughly half of the country thinks that like the conflict is either justified or not, like a mistake of Russia, which and is the worst out of European Union. I think even it's preposterous. So yeah, I mean, it kind of moved towards this kind of like populist politicians that are trying to follow Orban in terms of like how to conserve their power and go into like a little bit of a kind of like democracy like dictatorships in Europe, which is awful, right? Like that is one of the reasons why I don't live at home because our political
But I
situation is
think you
awful.
have the like manifestations against Fico right now, no?
Yeah, because he said he wants to leave NATO and European Union. And I'm like, are you insane? What are you doing? So yeah, it was actually the biggest manifestation since the fall of socialism. There was one more that was big one against him as well, when during his like previous government, a journalist and his wife were just murdered. So that was really bad. And now we have again manifestation because he said that he can imagine or something. Like, I don't want to quote him, but like he suggested that we could be outside of the European Union. And people are just like, yeah, no, I'm not having this. But it's interesting to hear that you're saying that we had kind of like a good karma with Ukraine, and then now it kind of like shifts a little bit. To double click this a bit deeper though, like from my perspective, it's kind of, yeah, I mean, we lost the money on the distribution, but I think like it's just ridiculous. It's more ridiculous for you to fund the bullets than then like kill your people. But what was the perception of like, was there even debate in Ukraine whether to stop the gas, or was it just an absolute no brainer?
There was no debate, but the thing is that we are still uh,
Transferring.
transferring oil, Russian oil.
Yes, you are. Because
And
we are
it's also,
contracted to do it, right?
I think we're not, we're obliged like till the next year, but I
Yeah,
think we
exactly.
already can stop it. And I think it's also like Hungary and Slovak depending on this oil a lot.
Yeah.
So it could be even
Yeah, even
worse.
deeper
And
conflict.
I heard that already. Your prime minister accused Ukraine in organizing these huge manifestations. In,
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
country.
yeah, yeah.
And like I would love us to be so powerful, but unfortunately, I don't believe we have a
No,
chance.
and even worse. Like we had recently our Cataster hacked. This is this thing where all the information about who owns which house, which parcel, whatever it's stored, we had hacked. And he said that it was done by Ukrainians. I was like, yeah, they're fighting a war, and it's a hobby. They're hacking our Cataster. So yeah, I mean, it's a relatively sophisticated strategy from his kind of point of view, right? Because he's looking for public enemy, and a lot of people kind of like have negative perception of the conflict itself. So he's kind of like playing this for the next elections, I'm guessing. One last question to this part: why are you still transferring oil, and why are you still transferring gas? Because it's just so contraintuitive. You are earning funds to your enemy, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know what's the answer for this
Mm-hmm.
question. First of all, I guess we are obliged by the contracts. From
I
other
think so. Yeah.
side, like the war is a nice reason to break any contract. From other
Yeah.
side,
Hmm.
I guess we also get quite a lot of money from that. And the thing and the problem is definitely the reaction from European countries because we really depend. It's like a way to bargain with
Yeah, for sure.
Hungary and
Hmm.
Slovak for some I don't know support
Okay.
or help.
That's a nice hypothesis. Potentially might be a bargaining chip, but I guess that's happening like behind the closed doors.
Yeah.
So, by the way, speaking of bargaining chips, our PM recently visited during the Christmas. He visited Putin, right? And he didn't get like a funny thing. He went as like private person, kind of. So he wasn't like sent by the Slovak government. He just was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go for a visit. Is this something that was registered in Ukraine, or is this like just not relevant information?
I mean, definitely it was. We talked about that. I haven't seen like a big reaction towards that, and
Mm-hmm.
the thing that we had it was negative. It was it's strange because that's the point that you guys are our neighbors, and you had the experience of working with the Russians, and that's the
Working
problem.
with Russians. Yeah, yeah,
Working with coexisting with the Russians,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you know how it will end up. And it's really strange. Like, for example, I understand when France or I don't know Germany that feels that they are far from Russia and they don't feel that anything threatens them. But
Mhm.
Poland, Slovak, Czech, Hungary, are the countries that will be really next after if Ukraine will fall. You will suffer. Russia will come closer to you.
Yeah. I think we. I think the narrative that they are spinning is, I don't know, kind of like, like one of our very high politicians have this like, Russia is wise, Russia is powerful. Like, he actually is really high ranking, one of the like leaders of the parties that are like in the government right now. And he went to Russia and he like recorded these super funny videos like, oh, look, they have butter and they have so many times of like sausages. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? But yeah, so like there's like spinning this narrative of kind of like, West bad, East, kind of like this pan-Slavism thing. And a lot of people still buy into it because a lot of people feel that it was actually better during socialism and they don't like capitalism in Slovakia. And there is, again, crazy amount of misinformation. So they do believe crazy things about the conflict, and it's really difficult to kind of like keep the truth. We are the most, there was like a recent study, we are the most misinformed and disinformed country in European Union.
And
So for us, like,
Hungary,
no,
Hungary,
more than Hungary by a few percent. Like the conspiration theories have like are more sticky in Slovakia than even Hungary. So it's really ridiculous. Yeah, and this is the country where you have 100K refugees. How is the perception of the kind of refugees living in Europe? Like, I don't know, is there like good countries to be in, bad countries to be in? How is the kind of like a perception of the treatment? Do you have any like friends or like family members that like
yeah, I have
left?
close ones who live in Germany and who lives in Netherlands and actually
Hmm.
in Britain as well. Uh, It's also tricky. Like people inside Ukraine are kind of upset with people who left and who live abroad
Uh huh.
and not supporting Ukraine as much as possible. So there is this issue between Ukrainians outside of Ukraine and inside, and it's easier for
Yeah.
girls because they can travel back and forth, and they kind of have this excuse of being a girl and a woman and a
Uh
mother
huh.
that has to be protected during the war, and guys who left Ukraine and they're not coming back and
Yeah.
joining army as they should. So and they cannot come back because if they will come back, they won't be able to leave the country again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
this is conflict inside of the country between.
Okay, so there is kind of beef between the people who left and the people who stayed, right? So that perfectly makes sense.
And there is a beef
Um,
between people who are on the front line and who are not on the front line.
okay.
But it's really hard. Like psychologically, it's really hard to be inside the war, like from
Yeah.
all the obstacles. And for people who are on the front line, it's even harder because Russia is so huge. They have so many people to send to the war, and Ukraine is much
Yeah. Yeah.
smaller. And somehow Russians are all right to be going to the front line and to kill people. I don't know for what reasons. Maybe they're
Mm.
paid better. Doesn't make any sense.
Maybe don't have a choice as well, right?
I mean, why wouldn't they have a choice?
I don't know. Like if you get, I mean, I have a friend who's Russian, who's like half Russian, half Czech. He lives here. He's also like a YouTuber. Hi Tim, and he he also got kind of like the letter from Russian government, like yeah, you have to go, and then he obviously didn't go, but he cannot go to Russia now because he would go to prison. So do you actually have a choice? You don't have a choice, right? Like you become like a criminal if you don't
Would you
go.
would you go to kill people in another country or stay in prison? I mean, I would prefer to stay in prison. No?
Yes, but I mean, Russian prisons also don't have a good vibe. But okay, fair enough. I would probably also rather stay in prison. But I mean, it's a close call, right? Like, I don't know, Russian prisons, you as a kind of a person who decided not to fight
Fine.
for Russia, probably a lot of torture. No, I mean,
I can send you some videos from Russian frontline. I am sure
it's a lot
that
of yeah.
Russian prison is much better than Russian frontline. They
Yeah,
just
I mean,
kill everyone. Like
okay, fair enough.
they're
No, fair enough.
sending so many people just as a meat without like any
Okay.
preparation, just to die.
Uh-huh.
It's insane. It's like
Okay, you're right. I never thought about it, but yeah, sure, I would probably rather stay in prison. So you don't. So what you're saying is that, um, in terms of like refugees, you don't really care about like what is the good country to go to because you kind of have a beef with the people who left. The reason why I'm asking is that, and this is like very very common argument. Like, yeah, we want to help the like Ukrainian people. It's awful what happened to them, but they get so many benefits. They get, I don't know, free travel and free healthcare, and like some people say that like the refugees get apartments. I don't think it's true, by the way. Like a lot of the benefits are not that simple, but I think there is this kind of um it's almost like a jealousy from like the Slovak people towards Ukrainians because they get something extra and they are not even Slovaks, which I mean, you're a refugee of war, obviously you need a little bit more help. But people are like this. So I'm just wondering whether the perception from the other side is, yeah, we get something extra, we don't get something extra. How do
I
people
mean,
perceive this?
I just know that in some countries, actually in Czech, in Poland, like, but Poland actually had a
Mhm.
long history of accepting Ukrainians
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to come
They're
and work
very
in Poland.
anti-Russian, right? Yeah.
No, not. They
Yeah.
actually quite a lot of, yeah, they're super anti-Russians, but they actually quite often feel higher than Ukrainians. They have kind of privilege being
Okay.
higher than Ukrainians, but it's
Okay.
another story. But I know that in some countries where they let Ukrainians work, the country is really benefiting economically. They really benefit, and they even have like a statistic around these numbers that with coming a number of certain number of Ukrainians, the economy begin to work to grow. It's not
I
happening.
mean, you get workforce that you didn't have to educate. That it kind of
Yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah,
sense.
yeah, 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 yeah. So economically, they're benefiting. I know that it happened in Netherlands, in Czech, in Poland, and the Ukrainians are closing quite a big part of work, like
Okay,
labors.
so essentially, what you're saying is that yeah, maybe there are some benefits for the people to integrate, but it's an investment, right? Because once they integrate, it actually help your workforce. That's the
Yeah,
that's
and
the angle.
Ukrainians, like Ukrainians, still as Europeans, they integrate really fast because we all have.
I mean, the language, yeah, obviously, it's very close. You understand the culture.
Yeah,
Plus, the education system is more or less like par to par.
yeah.
Because I mean, my last question I wanted to ask is one of the like things that Fico threatened if you don't, I guess, sell the Russian gas again. I don't know what's the alternative here. Was to like stop the electricity, which was like that I considered super dumb threat because I mean, okay, we lost what 300 million or 500 million or 200 million, whatever, some money. So we'll not even sell you another commodity, so we can lose even more. And then Polish said like, yeah, don't sell it. We can sell more. We can get more profit from it. So that was just flat dumb. But he also threatened to kind of like stop the help to Ukrainian refugees. Is this something that kind of resonated? Because I guess like some people have family in Slovakia,
I don't
or was it
know.
not even registered?
No, but I mean, like the main problem, as far as I understand, is the threats to like stop Ukrainian EU integration. because when the country joins European Union, it
Hmm.
has to fulfill a number of requests.
Crazy criteria, yeah.
Yeah, and all the countries would have like requests for this country. I don't know, Poland.
Yeah.
We're in fight with Poland in agriculture, so Poland can
Huh.
request us to raise the taxes on agriculture. Others,
Okay.
whatever, like Hungary already threatens us to stop our EU integration if we wouldn't. I don't
Mhm.
remember what, like make Hungarian language national language of the country. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
So
so the worry is that Fico will kind of hold this because you kind of like you damaged his income when he was a prime minister. That's the worry.
I guess that's a legitimate threat. But from other
Interesting.
side, I have to admit that Slovakia is still selling us a lot of weapons. Like, for example, Hungary is not selling us any weapon, though they have quite
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot from Soviet times. But
yeah. We are. I mean, that's the funny thing. Like, we are actually profiting from the war quite a bit.
yeah,
Yet we are still. Yeah, it's. I mean, Fico is like, for what it's worth, he's a really good kind of media manager or like news cycle manager. So I mean, he knows what to say, what not to say, how to handle contradictions,
but
and
actually, he still profits. He still does the business.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Look,
But I'm not sure like if like okay, he profits, like the state profits as a kind of like a second layer, but I think the cells are from like private armories, if I'm not wrong. But I mean, okay, like still it's something that like gets through taxes to the state. It's interesting angle because like the kind of us blocking your integration to EU never became a topic in Slovakia. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, and it does make sense, but I never heard about it. It's very interesting.
yeah, yeah, and that's the real threat. Like, not supporting Ukrainians in Slovakia is
Yeah.
sad, but but it's
Do you
alright.
think it's gonna like this is the I didn't want to ask it, but like since we already stumbled upon it, do you think it's gonna happen? Because I mean you are kind of in a difficult state. Now Trump is being elected, right? He like is gonna stop the war the first day, which already happened, but it didn't happen. He's also kind of like flexing in front of Putin, like a lot of moving parts, right? Plus, I mean, you are doing heroic effort, but it's not like you are, close to the victory. And I mean, European Union is not going to take you very likely if you're not part of NATO. You don't go to NATO if you're in open conflict. Isn't this like way too far to worry about if some Fico would block it? I mean, he's there for
Um,
4 years, tops.
I mean, you see how the situation changes like super rapidly, and we had
Uh-huh.
all this support from European countries. Now we have less support, but still there are high chances. Definitely, as long as the war will be going on, we won't be part of Europe. But if the
Yeah,
war
right.
will stop, I'm quite sure that we'll become part of EU, just because you will probably spend lots of money on rebuilding Ukraine after the war. I hope so.
Uh-huh.
And super
Uh-huh.
thankful to all the European countries in advance. But and it would be much easier with a country inside the union than with a
Mm.
country outside the union.
Do people in is this like prevailing or like majority believe in Ukraine?
I mean, that's what I think. I'm not sure if people really want to be part of European Union. Like, it's hard to say what are the benefits for common people.
Uh-huh.
So they definitely pro-European values, and they definitely against like authoritarian
Yeah, of
dictatorship
course.
of Russia. Uh, so West is our course, but I'm not sure. Like, if you ask the common people person on the street if you really want to go to EU, he will say it's my dream. So people
Okay, interesting.
probably vote
Yeah.
for Western values, but not for the European Union.
Yeah, that's just because like from the side of European Union and how much political capital we have right now, like within the European Union, I would honestly be a little skeptical. Like I'm not saying it's impossible, but I can really imagine quite a few countries blocking it because there's so much Euroscepticism that any growth of anybody joining, honestly, it's really difficult to imagine in the next few years. But I mean, let's see. Look, I would suggest to stop the political part now, and then in the second part we can talk a little bit about LGBTQ rights. But for
Okay.
now, I would just like take a little break.
Okay.